Welcome to the Superpower Logic podcast. I hope you like our new introduction. That's all the work of Richard. I cannot take any credit for that, folks. Today is Wednesday, August 5th, and Richard and I are coming to you, not live yet, but that is something we plan to work on. And today we're going to get a little bit into Iran, and Richard's going to give us some update and apply some of his military expertise about what's happening in Iran. And then we're going to get into some specific topics. A little bit, we're hearing a lot about munitions, munition levels. And then Richard's actually going to provide a little insight and maybe a little chatter from what he's hearing about from the big guys in DC. And then surprise at the end, surprise subjects. So to get started, Richard, here you are. You want to say hi?
Thanks, Kelly. It's great to be with you as always. It is a very, very hot Colorado. I'm ready for fall and football and some changing colors and give me some 65-degree days. It's we have smoke out here and we're going back into the 100 plus degree weather this weekend. So I'm coming to you
Good.
live. I'm coming to you from my den. It's very cool down here, and I'm looking forward to the fall, as I said. So, yeah, Iran, what a mess, right?
Yeah.
I'm
So, sorry to jump in. Before we get started, the kind of what I was thinking is Richard. So I'm going to ask for a couple items here, folks. I'm going to try to not be too bossy, but could you kind of give us an overall sense of what's happened, where we've been since last week? And then additionally, we'll get into a little bit about munitions. Like I said, you heard a lot about that. And then we'll get into kind of some things we're hearing from DC. But to start overall, what have been the developments from this last week? And is there anything that is important for us to be looking at?
well, I think it's important to focus on how the blockade is doing and that it is pinching Iran economically and doing what it is intended to do. That's pretty much the only positive thing I can say right now about how we're executing this conflict is our naval blockade. Um, I don't believe that Iran's economy alone is going to bring down the regime. They can withstand a lot of pain, and they are still managing to sell some oil. But the blockade is certainly putting pressure, and that is something that can't be really discounted when we talk about um, how easy it is for the IRGC and the regime itself to operate inside Iran. There are pain points when it comes to paying members of the IRGC. There are pain points when it comes to uh, being able to fund the actual operation. So, the blockade requires patience, and that is not something, unfortunately, that we're good at as Americans these days. So,
And
I do want
not,
to start off on that positive about the blockade.
okay, not to jump in and interrupt, but do you think, because this is actually something that's kind of been burning in my mind, are the generals and the staff, I mean, obviously the military, they are professionals, are they under more pressure under this current president than they typically would be? As far as I mean, like the ability to do their job and do it well? Or do you think that this current president and the way he operates is putting additional pressure that maybe they haven't seen in the past?
I think that the president is making life extremely difficult for our military leadership, for Admiral Cooper, who's the CENTCOM commander. I'm sure Secretary Hegseth and General Kane are are having challenges as well dealing with the president. And I say that because when you start things operations like this, there's an operational plan. There are milestones to the plan. There are centers of gravity, things that need to be accomplished.
Yeah.
And It's not just about, okay, we're going to take out X amount of targets. You take out X amount of targets in the hope of achieving a goal, whatever that goal might be. So, for example, we're going to destroy the Iranian Navy. It wasn't, we're going to sink X amount of ships. So,
Yeah.
it's naval leadership, it's infrastructure, it's support facilities, along with the ships themselves. Um, and I use that as a basic example that the more a commander in chief gets into the weeds of a military operation, the more challenging it is for the uniform leadership of that operation to execute the mission. And you can go back to, famous example was President Johnson, LBJ, during Vietnam, approving the target list every single day for
Yeah.
the bombing of North Vietnam. And I believe that President Trump is more interested in negotiating an end to this war than he is in winning it. And these constant startup and stopping of operations, saying we're going to the biggest operation ever, and then the Iranians are wanting to talk. All of these things make it extremely difficult for the forces in theater when you're constantly getting geared up to uh, to launch airstrikes, conduct a large scale operation. A lot of planning, a lot of effort goes into that, both operationally and logistically. Getting these aircraft ready to fly, whether you're on the carriers or on the air bases in the Middle East, the, the resupply flights from the United States, the C-17, C-5 folks that are flying in and out of theater. It's a really A to Z effort, if you will, and to constantly begin to start this and then stop, it has a wear and tear effect on our forces. That's really, really unfortunate. And it's a self-inflicted uh, wound, if you will. We don't have to do this to our folks.
We're
Um,
making it harder for ourselves.
100%. If you're getting ready to do one of these operations, for example, like conduct like a week's worth of large scale airstrikes, and you ramp up for it. Air Force, the Navy, for the most part, they ramp up for this, and weather
Yeah.
delays the operation. Well, everybody understands that we can't control the weather, and so that is a limiting factor. That's an inhibiting factor that we just can't control. So that doesn't really impact morale. When we do it to ourselves, people get upset. People get pissed. Remember, they've been there for a long time.
Yeah.
Being deployed is always difficult. You're missing birthdays, anniversaries, children are being born. It's stressful because these folks are under attack at these air bases, and uh, we really, really are handcuffing ourselves in that regard. And I find it extremely frustrating that President Trump, to me, it's the proverbial, shit or get off the pot.
Yep.
What are we doing?
The
And
boy
and
I
and we're
will.
there, either finish the job or declare victory and go home, because we've done a lot of damage to Iran, and I think rightfully so that the American people's patience is wearing thin, and I'm coming around to that side where I understand it and agree with it.
Not to take us, I know you're still giving us kind of a general overview, but can you take us through a little bit of what it's like on the tarmac, in the Middle East in August, nonetheless? If you
Yeah,
are, whether you're a pilot or your job is simply you're on the tarmac, I don't know any of the proper names, so I won't try to botch them. But can you? Because I imagine doing everything in this August heat and being on alert for that long. I imagine it's already a difficult job, and we just now add more stress to ourselves.
so it's incredibly hot, as you can
Like,
imagine.
how hot do you like?
So this time of year, uh, daytime highs, definitely around 120 degrees. There's no relief when the wind blows, it's not a, a breeze that's of any sort of relief. It's just hot air getting blown around. There's there's
And
no shade.
I was going to say on the tarmac itself, if it's 120 in the air, what would the temperature be?
So it's pretty hot. Like it'll be like 135, 140 degrees, the actual flight line itself, and that's not fun. Everybody, the fighter aircraft are under what we call sunshades, but uh, the larger aircraft, the tankers, the AWACS, whatnot, they're out in the open. Um, Everybody wears gloves. We used to call it inverse farmer's tan because you'd wear gloves and your hands would be white because you can't really touch anything. You can't open a car door. You
Oh,
can't you can't touch an aircraft with your bare hands. They're just so hot out there in the sun. And we fly at night, so all the munitions loading, refueling, the maintenance that goes on, the inspections that go on with the aircraft, that predominantly occurs during the daytime. And
okay.
so it is, and then we have this incredible stress which comes with being attacked. Um, I was very fortunate when I was deployed to the Middle East as an aircraft maintenance officer. I never got shot at on a flight line. I never had to uh, run into a shelter with Iranian missiles raining down on me. So there's a stress level there too, uh, and their job is also made more difficult because dispersal of aircraft because of a missile threat, a drone
Oh,
threat, and so
every
now
cut
now
out.
airplanes that would be normally parked right next to each other, they may not be, and so that makes repairing things and inspecting, signing off on jobs on aircraft uh, longer, more tedious. And we are deployed, you have the manpower to do the job, but you don't take a ton of extra people. And so that strains manpower. It's just a very, very difficult environment. It's no different on the carriers, the folks that are up on the roof, as they call it, the flight deck of the aircraft carriers is called the roof. It's very challenging for them. They're out in the Arabian Sea. They have to deal with the heat, but also with the humidity that you don't necessarily have to deal with if you're in Jordan or Saudi Arabia. So I hope I've laid it out fairly well. It's a challenging environment. And so you can imagine if you spend all day prepping airplanes to fly strike missions at night and the president just changes his mind, people are going to be pissed. There's
Yeah,
no getting around it. They get
it's
upset,
yeah.
and so the next time you say you're going to do it, people are like, are we really going to do it? Like, I've been through this a few times already. And I mean, what are we now? On the 10th, 12th time we were going to go World War II on Iran. So it's frustrating. I feel like some of my frustration and emotion is coming out right now, but I
But
really feel for those guys and gals over there.
it should be. And I also think it's important people understand what our service members are going through, right? They have an already extremely difficult job. And here we're adding difficulty that's really self-induced, right?
Yeah, no question about it. It's
Yeah.
it's uh it's
Not
incredibly frustrating.
not to take you too far away from the latest update on Iran, but Richard, I really appreciate that insight and knowledge about what it's actually like there because I think a lot of people can speak to a lot of hypotheticals, but now we get the actual human side, the the experience of our service members, right?
Yeah, and it's one of the most difficult aspects of operating in that environment, other than the environmental conditions, the heat and whatnot. But um, you have the sand, the dust, this it permeates your clothing. Um, it's awful. It's a really really rough environment, um, and I'm talking about the Air Force and the Navy. Can you imagine how hard it was for Marines and soldiers in Iraq
Oh,
who are kicking doors in and doing that in that environment while they're dodging bullets and trying to kill the bad guys? So it's really really challenging, and our military is doing a great job. That you can never say that enough about how hard they work and the sacrifices they're making, and those who've given their lives, those who've been wounded in
Yeah.
this operation. And I really just hope that the president decides to, um, I hope that the president decides to be decisive. I know that sounds kind of corny, but
No,
it's just, I mean, every
do
time
something.
there's a true social post I see on X, I'm like, okay, you said this 55 times. What are we doing?
Yeah. Make
Um,
a choice and stick to it.
yeah, I feel
Yeah.
like if we would have, I was a proponent of the ceasefire when it started, but I look back now and realize I was wrong. That the ceasefire should have never happened. We should have kept our foot on their neck, if you will, with the Israelis and gone through the complete target deck, eliminated um, everything needed for their the four stated goals of the war, destroy their centers of gravity, and deal with the Iranians from a position of strength, not just with the Israelis by our side, but I think also feel like with the Gulf Coast countries. And I hope we can get back to that point, but I'm very, very skeptical that I think that you can't put that toothpaste back in the tube. We squandered our opportunity.
Yeah. Do you think that what do you think the status, I mean obviously we don't know what these world leaders are talking about and even what they say it's they like I think some of these Gulf Coast states they're interesting because in one breath they're, oh, Iran is horrible, in the next breath they're making deals. So um but do you think there has been a deterioration of the relationships between the Gulf states, or really us? And,
I
and
Well, I don't think there's been a. I think MBS and um, I kind of look at the Saudis as leading this coalition of this loose coalition of Gulf Coast countries, these Arab Muslim countries. I look at the Saudis as kind of leading that charge. Um, I don't think that they have changed their mind that the Iranians are a problem and their vision for the Middle East beyond just being a uh, producer of oil. Uh, I believe MBS and the leadership in Kuwait, UAE, Qatar, Oman, Bahrain, Jordan, they all understand that Iran, as it currently exists, and certainly a nuclear Iran, is a problem for that vision.
yeah,
And so, uh, at the same time, um, they're not willing to. I think it would have been very, very beneficial. Again, we can Monday morning quarterback this, and it will be Monday
yeah,
morning quarterback for a long time. It might have been very beneficial from the get go to have um, carve out a part of Iran for Arab air forces to uh,
oh,
attack and take
yeah,
care of, and kind of a desert storm like coalition
yeah,
of nations, and let the United States and Israel do more of the heavy lifting over Iran.
yeah. And
And
they could get a chance to get out there. Their forces have a chance. What while there is like an umbrella of safety or support.
again, I think when it comes to matters like this, it's always good for your allies to have skin in the game, and to some extent they did because they were getting shot at. Their countries were getting attacked. You know, Kuwait and Saudi, Qatar, UAE, Bahrain, everybody was taking Iranian fire to some extent. So that wasn't planned. So bringing them in at the beginning, maybe part of a coalition of countries with their air forces, maybe that would have made a difference in the beginning.
Yeah.
And again, it's we're to the point now with what's going on and now in Yemen with the Houthis and the Red Sea and reports of them engaging Saudi tankers in the Red Sea and trying to extend their reach up towards the Suez Canal. There's only one way to deal with these people, and that is with extreme force. If we're really going to do this, we We need to really hammer down and finish the job. And I don't see this president doing that.
Well, anything short of that maybe emboldens them.
Certainly, survival is a big thing to these people.
Yeah. Well, well, thank you for that, Richard. I really appreciate that insight. And two, and I think it's so easy for us to sit how many, hundreds and thousands of miles away in our safe, cool, air-conditioned homes, right here in America, away from the threat. And at the end of the day, I hope that as all Americans, we can do a better job supporting our service members. The men, the women, of the Air Force, the Navy, Army, Marines, down to Coast Guard, all everything, right?
And
Uh,
don't forget those Space Force guys.
I was okay. I was just gonna say, and I forgot the last branch, the Space Force, which maybe we'll do a deep dive into that one day. My guess is those guys are doing some work that most of us couldn't even understand. So I take to kind of go a little further into Iran here, because that was fascinating. What is the reality of the munitions? Or can you just give us like an overview? I'm seeing these articles saying, oh, we're out of munitions. But there's got to be a difference between defensive munitions and offensive munitions, and kind of where do you think we stand, and if we should be worried about something, what is it?
So one thing about all these reports is they're always nice, neat, round numbers about you know, what people are doing, what news organizations are doing is they're they're going off of what's been procured and what they believe we have versus estimates of what we've used.
Okay.
So, to my knowledge, nobody has said, "Hey, listen, we have X amount number of theater high altitude air defense interceptors left, THAAD interceptors." And I say that because
Is that
when
a
this
defensive munition?
yes, so the THAAD, THAAD,
Okay.
the THAAD and the Patriot missile system are surface air missile systems that we use. The THAAD is a very broad, it covers a huge area, which is why it's a theater, high altitude air defense, to
Okay.
intercept incoming ballistic missiles at a high altitude and cover a huge amount of territory
Okay.
with these systems. The Patriots are a very high-end, sophisticated surface to air missile system that can engage missiles. It can engage cruise missiles. Also, it can engage fighter aircraft, bomber aircraft. It's a very sophisticated system. It's been around for since the 80s. Um, it's a system that's been upgraded continuously. So this is not your father's Patriot system from Desert Storm. Okay, it's constantly getting upgraded. Not just the missile itself, but the radar and the sensor suites that go along with it, the fire control system. So it's a very sophisticated system, very reliable, very good. Um, so these are defensive weapons, and the problem with defensive weapons is you just don't know how many you're going to have to use to protect your forces and assets.
Yeah.
When you plan an air campaign, you definitely have we call it weaponeering, and so these incredibly smart people, we call them patch wearers in the Air Force, men and women that are fighter pilots, bomber pilots, that go to the U.S. Air Force Weapons School at
Okay.
Nellis Air Force Base in Las Vegas. It's the Air Force's Top Gun, except we actually get like a master's degree almost in our Top Gun, whereas the Navy just goes for like 7 weeks and plays volleyball on the beach. But
But
kidding,
no
I'm
dig
kidding.
to Navy there, right?
Yeah, just a little dig. But no, so when the campaigns are being planned, these people they take aircraft and munitions and marry them up to the targets. And so you have a good idea of what we're going to need from a weapons perspective for the war. So, but defensive weapons, again, we knew that Iran had a lot of ballistic missiles, but you still don't know how many they're going to shoot at you. You also don't take a shot at every missile coming in. If if the fire control system for a THAAD or a Patriot realizes that, okay, this inbound Iranian ballistic missile is going to land in the middle of the desert and not near a military installation or
Yeah,
personnel
where
or a
there's no danger.
population center, yeah, they just let it land. They don't
Good.
waste the round at it for the most part.
Yeah.
Uh, and it's certainly not a good thing to be shooting a multi-million-dollar missile at
Mm.
a cheap drone. But if that drone is going to be targeting a flight line of F-15Es or uh, a barracks full of soldiers or airmen, well, then I would say take every shot you need
Yeah.
to protect those assets and certainly to protect our service members. Um, this has been a glaring problem in the United States defense industry, though, for a long time. And that problem has been the, the ability to rapidly produce sophisticated munitions. Um, it's one thing to rapidly produce 155 millimeter artillery shells. Um, and you can make an argument like with Ukraine that we haven't been able to do that fast enough either, but you can certainly produce them quicker than you can with extremely advanced missiles. And the supply chain that goes into,
Yeah. Why?
well, a huge part of it is that when you build these weapon systems, you have suppliers from all across the country. Some of that is because of what we call the FAR, the FAR, the Federal Acquisition Regulations. So, Lockheed Martin could make everything they need for the interceptors for the Patriot, but they need to use small businesses. They have to have, they
All, all of these rules.
there's a lot of rules, and also it helps that you have vendors and supply chains from all across the country. So you have congressional buy-in for your
Yeah.
program. I
Uh,
believe the F-35, there are components for the F-35 or engineering support for the F-35 in all 435 congressional districts.
wow.
That's not an accident. So um, these are
This
very,
the
very
pol
complicated things that we do to ourselves.
yeah, this is where politics now has maybe usurped actual need, right? Like this, the fact that we're here is because of DC, right? And politics.
Sure. I mean, it's Ford would not build cars this way.
Oh yeah,
Ford
that's what I'm
Ford
thinking.
Ford is not a charity organization where it's like, okay, well, you know what? We really like Bill and we like Joe, so we're going to let them do some of our machine shop work and make a few components that we could do ourselves, but we're going to let them do it, and it costs them a lot more to make the same thing we could make, and they
Yeah,
can make 50 a day and we can make 500 a day.
and
Ford's
there's
not going to do that.
no, and oh, by the way, Bill and Joe are not reliable, right? They're
Right.
inconsistent, and then we have to have the products shipped in, unpacked, fit in, so it adds all these additional steps.
Yeah. And so it's a real challenge. Um,
It,
Unfortunately, the DC solution is to just throw money at it,
I was going to
and
say, throw more
that
money,
doesn't work.
throw more money at the already problematic system, right? Um,
Sure.
now, have we given away? And when I ask this question, I'm not passing judgment for or against. Have we given away some of our like some of these munitions, right, to foreign countries to defend themselves?
So we've certainly given some things to Ukraine when it comes to Patriots and whatnot. Again, President Trump stuck his foot in his mouth when he talked about Ukraine manufacturing their own interceptors for the Patriots. So
Yeah.
just
What happened there?
so it's a I think the president spoke without talking to anybody at the Pentagon, and certainly not talking to the defense contractors that make this. Northrop Grumman plays a role. They make the solid rocket boosters for these missiles. Lockheed Martin makes the interceptor, and Raytheon makes the radar and the fire control system, uh, and obviously there's a lot of other companies involved as well. But to set up production, you need these companies would have to actually go into Ukraine. You have
Oh,
to train people, and the tooling and the hardware to actually manufacture this stuff. You know, it's again like, for example, in Japan, I believe it's Mitsubishi license builds Patriots uh, for for the Japanese self defense forces, uh, which is great. They're a trusted vendor. Uh,
yeah.
you know, these companies, Lockheed Martin, Mitsubishi, they can't market this stuff on their own. The U.S. government, Lockheed Martin can't go out and say, "I'd like to sell F-35s to anybody."
Yes.
U.S. government doesn't allow that. They're not selling cars. So, so the idea that we were just going to start up a factory and make Patriot interceptors in Ukraine, you're talking years and years before you'd ever see an actual interceptor missile come off of an assembly line. And so, what's been signed here recently, I believe Lockheed got upwards of $60 billion contract to increase Patriot production. I believe it's threefold. THAAD production is like four times. They're trying
Yeah.
to really crank it up,
Tripled
but
in.
but but again, it's like a diesel engine. So everything it takes a long time for it to get warmed up and get
Yeah.
going. Once it gets going, it's great. But
Yeah.
that supply chain and the vendors and the engineering support to crank it up to hire people, you know,
Yes.
are
Well,
you
and
doing a are you doing a 24/7 operation to manufacture these weapon systems? You have to test them. There's so much that goes into it. And we're talking about the Pentagon. It's the largest damn bureaucracy in the world. It's
yeah.
ridiculous. So it just does not happen quickly. And unfortunately, because the customer for all these large defense companies is the Pentagon, and the Pentagon moves at snail's pace.
Glacial.
Over time, the companies do as well. Well, I don't have to go that fast because my customer doesn't care.
You're right. Yeah.
Yeah.
The whole
So
slows down. Plus, do how willing are these companies to give away proprietary technology in a territory that's under threat from Russia?
Well, they're not going to. It's the government's decision to give away the
Oh, it is.
technology.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but at the same time, you
So
bring up a
are
great point, Kelly. It's hard enough to do this stuff, let alone do it to build things in a war zone.
yeah.
And so,
It,
and in fairness, Ukraine was the heart and soul of Soviet defense
it was.
manufacturing back in the day. So it's not like they don't have a well-earned reputation of manufacturing weapons and testing weapons. And Ukraine's done an amazing job at innovation in
When
this
they
war.
allow it, right? When they allow it, as long as they're not firing some of these innovative.
Well, yeah, they're also like, let's face it, Ukraine's not designing F-35s either.
Yeah.
They're making drones,
Yeah.
and they're doing amazing things with it. It's not extremely high-end munitions, which if you were going to have a Patriot interceptor facility, production factory, that's a pretty sophisticated uh, piece of equipment there. And being in an active war zone where you have a very real threat of Russian drone, air, and missile attacks, that just makes the equation even more difficult.
Yeah, now, is it true? And I actually don't even know that a THAAD system, is that what you call it? Is it true there's five of them? Or are there more?
Well, there's the theater high altitude air defense system. It's still in production. It's a relatively young weapon system,
Okay.
um, and we rotate them around.
They're
You know,
movable.
yeah, they're movable. They're not. We can put them on C-17s and fly them around, redeploy them and whatnot. The thing with that is that the U.S. military is organized by combatant command. So there's U.S. European Command, there's U.S. Indo-PACOM Command, and you know, um, just two examples. There's U.S. Southern Command, which is South America and Central America. There's U.S. Northern Command, which is the United States and Canada. So um, you also have functional commands like U.S. Strategic Command, which manages our nuclear forces. You
Okay.
have U.S. SOCOM, Special Operations Command. So it's either geographic or functional, right? And
Okay.
all of these commands have operational plans on their books, and they plan for and prepare and train for executing these plans they have on their books. So if you're Indo-PACOM in Hawaii and you're the four-star admiral uh, running it, you have a ton of options for if China tries to invade Taiwan or the North Koreans try to invade South Korea. You have a whole command in South Korea called USFK, U.S. Forces Korea. And that's an incredible defensive plan. Like that 5027 plan is always being modified and updated based on changing threats and requirements. So all of these combatant commanders, they need equipment to be able to execute these plans. And we just don't have enough to go around for everybody. During the Cold War, we used to have this idea of being able to fight two wars simultaneously, and we
Which
abandoned
is
that.
what we did in World Two,
Well, yeah,
right?
but I mean, I'm talking like in the 70s and 80s. Like we
Okay.
had this, okay, like we can fight the big bad red threat going through the
Okay.
Fulda Gap in Germany. And we could also take care of the North Koreans if they
Okay.
decided to start things up. Uh,
Yeah.
we don't have that anymore. We don't have enough ships. The Air Force, everything is too spread out. Um,
Yeah.
Now you can come at it from a different perspective and say, are we are we spread out too thin, or do we have too many commitments? Are we trying to take
Ooh,
care of too many places?
that's such
And
an important point, Richard.
yeah, so again, I mean, we can't. It's a cliche. We can't be the world's policeman, but at the same time, we we are really hard on
Yeah.
ourselves about the defense budget. and and a lot of people that are hard on the Pentagon, and deservedly so, for how they can't pass an audit and how they manage their programs and budget. At the same time, you know, these weapons that work very well, like THAAD and Patriot, they're expensive. The people that operate them, you don't learn how to operate these systems in a few days. The pipeline, the time to train them, the amount of money it takes to train a pilot to fly an F-15E or an F-22, you're talking millions of dollars. It's a real investment in just one person. So we
Yeah.
operate these very sophisticated weapon systems, and there's a cost associated with that, not just for the equipment, but also the people that maintain and operate it. And
Yeah.
again, we've talked on this podcast many times about stress testing our relationships with our allies, and that
Yep.
relationships, I believe personal relationships in your life, whether it's with friends or your spouse, your siblings, they evolve and things happen, better
Yes.
or for worse, that change those relationships. I don't think it's any different with countries. And so
Yeah.
we should be evaluating, like, okay, if we get rid of Iran's nuclear threat, you know, we might really change the dynamic of the footprint of the US military. Do we need to be in the Middle East at the level we've been for
Which, if you,
decades?
yeah, if you look at this administration's uh, national security strategic plan, we want to be out of the Middle East. We do not want to continue to maintain the same amount of resources and, and assets there. We will be the ultimate backstop, right? So things don't get out of control. But it's plain as day written there. And I'll tell you what, that is one of the things that led me to support this Trump administration initially, was that they acknowledged this. They acknowledged our larger threat was in the Pacific, and feel as if, your point, this frustration over this war, I am frustrated because this to me just seems so obvious. And finally, a president kind of said that. And yeah, we probably are spread too thin. Not with our assets and resources, but why have we made all these commitments? And I'm not seeing this administration really live up to that. And I know there are some folks that was it Albridge Colby who kind of wrote this document. Sorry if I got the wrong name there. I will do research on that for next week. But I've read this document thoroughly, and I was really looked excited by it. And to be frank, too, some of this the Biden administration had noticed, right? I guess where I would hope between administrations there wouldn't be much daylight would be like kind of our national security strategy, right? And hopefully we don't see our, from D to R, our enemies don't kind of change overnight. But and I'm getting incredibly frustrated by this because it feels like we may just get bogged down, in more of the same. But on that note, Richard, I'm asking you to possibly make some predictions here. Um, and if you don't want to make predictions, but can you can you talk about how this may change our overall military strategy? This war in Iran, some of the lessons we've learned here. And, we've just been speaking, which has been fascinating to me about our resources that, and the assets. How may we, in what ways may we see change if we're going to see it, or what areas might think, or ideally, what could be the lessons learned here in our larger strategy?
Well, I think, uh, I go back real quick, not to get deep dive into history, but when aircraft carriers came on the scene over 100 years ago, the U.S. Navy was basically run by battleship admirals. And
Okay.
General Billy Mitchell of the Army Air Corps proved that aircraft could sink um, armored warships, and World War II proved that the battleships were no longer relevant compared to an aircraft carrier. I fear that we are at a point now today when it comes to unmanned technology and drones, which that is a very broad spectrum. We have um, unmanned prototype aircraft, the Collaborative Combat Aircraft Program for the U.S. Air Force, where we are having very sophisticated uh, unmanned fighter aircraft that are working hand in hand with manned fighter aircraft using AI to what we call the CCA, the Collaborative Combat Aircraft Program. It's also referred to as the Loyal Wingman Program. So, for example, one F-22 could have 12 of these unmanned aircraft flying with it. They could
Wow.
they could go do all different types of missions, suppression of enemy air defense. They could be decoys. They could fly uh, counter air missions, offensive counter air missions. They could do defensive counter air missions. All these different things, um, and there's tremendous advantages to that. Um, we really need to embrace that. And then you have the low end of drone technology like FPV, first person view drones that are, we see it in Ukraine with Russian and
That's like
Ukrainian drones where they just chase after one guy and kill him. And it's,
they're like holding up a phone, like
yeah, and it's
like
a
a
little,
control.
yeah, it's a drone the size of a basketball, but it's going to kill somebody. It's got a little
Yeah.
shaped munition on charge on it, and it's going to kill somebody. And it's, so that technology, there's a very low end, low sophisticated end of that technology to the very, very high end, right? I fear that the United States, we cannot get behind on on this technology, not just in manufacturing it and making it technically excellent, but also the tactics, techniques, and procedures and how to employ it. And I worry about the what we call in the Air Force back in the Cold War days, the fighter pilot mafia and the bomber pilot mafia. I worry about Air Force generals. The Air Force is run by pilots. um,
Yeah,
exclusively for the most part.
but all
I worry
sorts.
about
Oh wait, all sorts
mainly
of bombers or primarily fighters.
primarily fighters. I mean, there's bomber guys as well, but it's, for the most part, the Air Force is run
Yeah.
by fighter pilots at the highest levels. I would just say that, I don't want them to lose sight of how quickly things are changing and be uh, handcuffed to the idea that manned fighter aircraft are always a part of the solution. I I don't see manned fighter aircraft going away, certainly in my lifetime. They'll be around for several more decades, but I don't want us to fail to embrace what is obviously taking place in the battle spaces of the Middle East and of Ukraine and Russia.
Yeah.
So, and we really are
Does
going to
it
have to.
start?
Uh,
Not to interrupt here, but I guess drones and they fly, but then you also have unmanned vehicles in the water. Has the aircraft largely led the charge on drones, or is it or I don't want to say drones. I always fly manned vehicles, or is the effort being somewhat spread out?
so, I mean, unmanned drones obviously started in the air, but there's autonomous surface vehicles in the water. There's largely right now, Ukraine is being resupplied. Their front lines are being resupplied by unmanned vehicles. It's too dangerous to have convoys going in. That General Petraeus talked about it a few weeks ago. Uh, there's
I saw that.
essentially a kill zone that's about 60 miles wide, between the Ukrainian and Russian forces, where if you're outside, you're in real trouble because of drones. Um, Being able to resupply, um, with any type of convoy or manned vehicles is a suicide mission. It's just a kill zone, and I'm sure we're using
Yeah.
learning lessons from all of that. The Ukrainians are all accounts very open about how they're dealing with these threats, and they're in many ways they're writing the playbook on how to operate this way. I would also argue that the last thing you want to do is get bogged down in what Ukraine and Russia are doing right now. That's just a warrant to get a lot of folks killed. And I mean, it's the definition of a quagmire right now. What is concerning to me
Hmm.
moving forward is the vulnerability of air bases. And I look to the
Okay.
West, to your comments earlier about the national security strategy, I look to the West to Taiwan. And the Pacific Ocean is, if you've never been in that part of the world, and I don't mean going from LA to Hawaii. uh, I mean when you leave Hawaii and go to Guam, it's an over 9 hour flight. You get an idea of just how
Of
big the
ocean,
planet is.
just
It's nothing
just
but
water.
just water. And
Yeah.
when you look at the fight, if we were to defend Taiwan against a PRC invasion, uh, you have Okinawa and Kadena Air Base. You have Guam with Anderson Air Base. You have the U.S. Navy and where their ships would be throughout the theater. But Guam and Okinawa, mainland Japan, our air bases there, Yokota, Misawa Air Base, the naval station, Atsugi Navy Airfield in Japan. Those are fixed targets. And as we've seen in Iran, um, even with inaccurate weapons, just shooting missiles at these facilities, it slows down operations. It has a tremendous
Yeah.
impact on morale and people's confidence and be able to execute their jobs. Um, U.S. Military airfields are all about logistics. Okay, the way they're laid out, the way buildings, hangars, everything is put in place for a reason. And with Google Earth, There's no secrets anymore. There's not a military airbase in the world that's not on Google Earth. So, uh, so we have to really do a deep dive based on what's happened in Iran and what's going on now with Ukraine and Russia and Ukraine's incredible strike campaign against infrastructure and strategic assets in Russia. We are going to have to do a very deep dive about survivability and how we would prosecute a conflict like um, how we're going to prosecute a conflict like defending Taiwan against China. And right now, like some of the things we propose, it's like, well, we're going to build it's called ACE, Built Combat Employment Program. So, like, we're going to build an auxiliary airfield in Marianas. Well, that's great and all. Now you have an airfield on Tinian, which is a few, 100 miles away from Guam. But the Air Force puts it on their website that, hey, look at us, we're building this. Well, the Chinese go to af.mil, they can see
Yeah.
it. So we're not doing it the right way. A serious conversation internally in the War Department. Okay, how viable are air bases in what is called anti-access area denial? Okay, um, I'm not going to allow you access into my part of the world, and I'm
Yeah.
going to deny it if I have to. So, um, and that's what China's doing or trying to do. In many ways, it's what the U.S. does. The U.S. Navy can
Yeah.
project power far away from our shores, denying access to America and protecting our shores or
Yeah.
a friendly nation. Um, where where this conversation, I believe, is going is the U.S. Navy is going to become so much more important than it already is. It already
Yeah.
guarantees the global commerce and is a tremendous branch of the armed forces and has a wonderful history. They're just become even more important and relevant because, as we've seen, our air bases have been regularly attacked, sometimes
Yeah.
successfully, in the Middle East. Uh, they have tried to take a shot or two
Or
at the carrier strike groups, but they can't get close to it because they are yes, an aircraft carrier is a huge piece of equipment. I get that, but the ocean is it's a 1,000 foot long ship. That is nothing
yeah,
in
there's
the
a lot of places to hide in an
yeah,
ocean.
a lot of places to hide. Submarines are I argue are our most effective weapon. Um, Not just with offensive capabilities, sinking ships and being able to fire cruise missiles, and uh, they insert special forces. They have the nuclear deterrent. They're incredible ISR, intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance assets. The Navy is extremely agile. It can deploy quickly. It can be anywhere in the world in a reasonable amount of time for the most part. The
Yeah.
problem with the Navy, we don't have.
Yeah. We just don't have enough we literally we just don't have enough ships. And even if we want to build them, we've allowed our supply chain to be held captive by our enemy. And this is again, it's like where we do it to ourselves, right? Because earlier in the show we talked about F-35s and their engineering or components, whether it be the engineering or production or whatnot being spread across the country. Well, the critical materials are not they're in some cases they could be held up by our enemies. We saw what happened in COVID, right? The minute that it became clear that, people were shutting down borders because ultimately a government has its responsibility to its people. And I this was another thing that I really hope this administration can pull through on. And again, part of the reason I was very attracted to this national security strategy is because if we don't secure up some of these materials, we are way more vulnerable than most people are willing. Most people don't even think about it, but then are willing to admit. And I think, remember, I believe it was Alexander Hamilton. To me, Alexander Hamilton was just like, he just common sense, like this makes sense. I get it, guy. and I was reading a letter, and I wish I'm a super nerd, folks, and I read a lot of founding fathers letters, whether to each other. And in a letter, and if I come across it, I will save it and I will share it with all y'all. But he was like, he was like, and it was somewhat into tariffs, but it was basically like a country should always protect anything it needs to survive, right?
Right.
How the hell did we get away from that? Pardon my French there, folks, but how did we get away from that? If we need it to feed ourselves or defend ourselves, it should be here, even if it costs us 10 cents more a widget.
Yeah, I don't disagree at all. It's you know, we're getting to a point now where one of the things that really I believe that the the DC establishment, I like to call them the political class. I'm sure I've used other choice words for them uh in my life, but I think they want to make things more complicated than they really are. And a huge part of that is it gives value to their opinions.
To that,
If
to
it's
those
if it's
people.
yeah, I'm going to give a solution on this, and the more complex we think the problem is, the more valuable the opinion is on how to solve said problem. Which
Yeah.
a lot of
And the
times,
more
if
I, right?
yes, I
And
get
the more
paid more.
important that, yeah,
Yeah, there's no
yeah,
there. All the think tanks are in DC for a reason, and so the idea that okay, this problem is complex because either A, I'm selling it as complex, or B, it's been a problem for so long, it has to be a complex solution, right? Because there have been so
yeah,
many smart people. Why can't we figure out
yeah,
Iran? It's been a problem for almost 50 years. Well, we just have never had the intestinal fortitude to take care of it. And I say all of this to this point, which is why in the effing world are we not just saying China, if you try to invade Taiwan, we're going to defend them. I'm going to open up an embassy in Taipei. I'm going to put U.S. aircraft in Taiwan, and you want to come, FAFO, right? If it's that important,
yeah.
then we should be doing that right now. And I'm going to be really upset
It
if,
works.
if China attacks Taiwan and we decide to defend them, and we could have just, all along, same with Ukraine. We could have put U.S. forces in Ukraine without making Ukraine a member of NATO. Just say, hey, listen, if you attack Ukraine, there's like 5 Air Force fighter squadrons operating throughout the country. So you're attacking them too. It might have given Putin a little
Yeah,
bit of pause. And I wish we
I,
would just be more clear because our forces are too spread out. We're not going to have enough of all this stuff anytime soon. So we need to start prioritizing what we're actually going to defend and be public about it. It's the one thing I give Biden a ton of credit. He probably didn't realize he was saying it, but when he did say, yeah, of course we're going to defend Taiwan, and they all had to walk it back, it's like, who the hell cares about offending Beijing? I'm so sick and
yeah,
tired of the one China policy. Let's be clear. Either we're going to defend Taiwan or we're not. And unlike Iran, let's make the case to the American people. And
yeah,
before we have to like, oh my God, the Chinese Navy is 20 miles off the coast of Taiwan and we're going to war.
yeah. Before it's too late,
Yeah.
right? Before it's too late. I have to say, folks, this has been my favorite episode. So if we're gonna hear more from Richard, I really appreciate your military expert, and I really hope the audience does as well. And if there's any questions you guys have, please start putting them in the comments. We're on X, Superpower Logic, right? We share the Richard and I are both personally on X, and we will comment, on YouTube. We will put our socials under, um, we'll comment our socials as well. And so I don't, Richard, bring fish pictures or
What's
should
that?
we just maybe that? Do we bring pictures? Or are we going to save that for another day?
Oh, I do not have them. I've been I'm
Okay.
I'm I did
So,
not complete
folks,
my homework assignment. I apologize.
folks, my prediction just got a little smaller. Every week he doesn't show up with them. I'm a
I
little
will
less confident in
I'll
his.
tell you what, I will post pictures on our Superpower Logic X account and
Perfect.
then we can go over them next week. So I will post the receipts on X so that
Oh,
everybody can see them whenever they want. I will make a I am writing it down right now, Kelly. So um, this
yeah.
has been a lot
He's
of
bringing
fun.
receipts, folks.
Yep, I'm bringing the
We
receipts.
will run them through. We will bring them. We need them through the AI detector. No, I'm joking. Well, Richard, thank you so much for your knowledge. Anything you want to say to wrap up?
uh, I really, really hope that we get to a point um, where we stop talking about negotiating with Iran. We continue the blockade and um, communicate to the American people. I think the American people, we've had hundreds of service members wounded. I believe it's 18 now who've been killed in action. Um, I believe the American people deserve, at a minimum, an address from the president, from the Oval Office, about where we're at in the war and what's actually been accomplished to the extent that we believe whatever the president says. Um, Maybe he would actually bring some receipts. I'd like to know where is the Iranian nuclear material? Is it
Yeah,
underground? Is it in? Can they are they unable to access it? What is the status of their missile program? Um, to the best of their knowledge, I'm not saying like we assess is an okay way to start a briefing. We assess that this amount of their ballistic missile capability has been destroyed. This is what we assess they have left. We assess this using Israeli and U.S. intelligence sources, whatever the case may be. We deserve that.
yeah,
And it was a mistake from the beginning that the American people were not better prepared for what we were about to embark on. And so I really hope that again we continue the blockade, keep the pressure on them, and I'd like as we call in the military, a sit rep, a situation report from the commander in chief. I think as a veteran, as a taxpayer, well, I don't have any more right as a veteran, but all of us as citizens and taxpayers deserve that from our commander in
yeah.
chief and our leadership.
I couldn't have said it any better. And obviously, to the family members and friends of those service members, our hearts go out to you. 18, that number is creeping up. And I hope not just as a citizen, but really for the friendly family, friends, and the service members that were around these folks, that we do get some answers. Richard, I couldn't have said it any better. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. And if you guys have any more questions for Richard or me, post them in the comments. Visit us on X. So have a great night.
Thanks, Kelly.